What's going on, everybody? This is Island Hopper TV, and today we're coming to you from Florence, Italy, also known as Firenze. We will be showing you the best things to do while visiting this beautiful city. There will be timestamps below in the description, so do check those. First up is the Accademia Galleria, which is where Michelangelo's statue of David is located. This is a small museum in Florence, but it is one of the oldest art schools in Europe and also a key place to learn about the Renaissance and mostly the period from 1300 to 1600. Definitely worth a stop here if you're looking for paintings by Florentine artists because they have a large collection. Next up is the Florence Duomo, also known as the Cathedral of Santa Maria del Fiore, and it's one of the largest churches in Europe and certainly an iconic symbol here in Florence. While in this square you can walk around and take pictures. Known for its dome, this structure actually was the scene for the Italian Renaissance and inspired many architects and artists across the continent to do the same. Next up, here we are at the Palazzo Vecchio. It's the small town hall where they actually have a replica of Michelangelo's David statue and the gallery of statues in the museum next door. This area was founded in 1299. It's a palace, it's a museum, and it's also the city hall, as I said. You will also see a fountain of Neptune right here in the city center. One of the great things about exploring Florence, especially on this side of the river, is you have many different locations very close within walking distance. You won't really need taxis or cars here because you can walk from the Duomo to Palazzo Vecchio all the way out to Ponte Vecchio and all the museums in between. For many, including myself, this is essentially the heart and soul of Florence, right along the banks of the Arno River. And speaking of the Arno River, this here is the Ponte Vecchio, or Old Bridge. This was the only bridge across the Arno in Florence until 1218. And it was actually important for the Romans, so it was a big Roman crossing, and there's a secret passage that goes across the Ponte Vecchio, but nowadays you can do some shopping while crossing the bridge. Very important historical monument here. And I actually purchased that gold coin, which is St. Christopher, the patron saint of travel. And you can see they've got these statues right here with these views overlooking the Arno River right here in the middle. Now we'll go up to the hill here and get one of the best views in Florence. This is actually called the Piazzale Michelangelo. This is a hill on the south bank of the Arno River, just east of the center of Florence. From here you can get views looking down towards the Duomo. Very picturesque up here. Also, they have a statue of Michelangelo's David. This is just a replica though. Also, you have the Basilica di San Miniato. And the best thing is, the views up here are free. And now we're going to go across the river. This time we're going to the Leonardo da Vinci Museum. This is an amazing museum where you and your family can actually take part in playing with some of the inventions from Leonardo da Vinci. Much of what you'll find in here is mechanics and machines, so that's really hands-on activity. It is around €8 per person for the entry. Not too expensive, but you do got to pay a little bit to support the museum. And we aren't really highlighting all of the museums on this, but there is another really important museum I want to point out. It's called the Uffizi Museum. This one is also an art exhibit that you should check out alongside the Leonardo da Vinci Museum. You could probably do both in the same day, right before lunch or just after lunch. Many of the activities that you will partake in while here are going to be museums and historical reference because this was a major part of the Renaissance that led Europe out of the Dark Ages, thanks to Florence, Italy. Speaking of the Renaissance, here we are at the Palace of Pitti. This is actually a Renaissance palace on the south side of the River Arno, a short distance from the Ponte Vecchio. They have impressive galleries, and the museums house important collections of paintings, sculptures, and other pieces of art that are worth checking out. Also, the Uffizi Gardens right here are a wonderful Italian garden. Along with the Uffizi Gallery, the Pitti Palace, and the Uffizi Gardens, they're all part of the same museum complex, together with the Vasari Corridor. Now here we are at the Plaza De Republica. In here they're going to have a merry-go-round, and other activities that you can do. A lot of people just gather here. It's situated in between the Ponte Vecchio and the Duomo. A lot of these attractions are very close proximity to each other, and it doesn't take much time to see all of these things. It's just a matter of going inside the museums and checking out the attractions that's going to really take your time. I would recommend spending 3 days in Florence at least. Now let's talk about the statue of David that you'll see all across the city. The original is actually inside the Accademia, but you will see it up on the hill. You'll see it at the Palazzo Vecchio. And the reason this is such a symbol of Florence is because it represents youth and it represents power, and it all goes back to the Renaissance, and it has been known to identify Florence through this image. And as you'll notice, David holds the pouch of the sling in his left hand above his shoulder. If you get a chance, definitely try to check out the inside of the Santa Maria Novella. It's the church in Florence, situated opposite of the Duomo, and it was the first great basilica in Florence and the city's principal Dominican church. It was built on the site of the 9th century oratory of Santa Maria del Vigne, and this site was assigned to the Dominican order in 1221. Now I'm going to encourage you to check out the Museum of Galileo Galilei, one of the great astronomers of the old world. And tickets for the museum are €10. I also want to point out the amount of famous people in history that come from here. Da Vinci, obviously, Niccolo Machiavelli, the Medicis, Florence Nightingale. Here you have Galileo, you have Michelangelo, Dante from Dante's Inferno, and many more. But here at the Galileo Museum, you can expect to find a lot of information about the old world astronomy work that Galileo was doing and charting the stars. For those of you who do enjoy astronomy, you have to check this place out, and it's right next to the central area where the River Arno is. Next up, we're headed to Mercato Centrale. On the outside, you have plenty of shopping for clothes, Italian leather, and other goods. But then when you go inside, you'll see that they have a wide collection of food and other things that are worth checking out if you like to shop and just enjoy the Florentine market space. While here, I decided to pick up a leather bag because Italian leather is some of the finest you will find. I also ended up getting an Italian leather jacket or coat, which was actually a great purchase for me, and I still have it to this day. And also, while here, you must try some of the local cuisine. That's going to include a lot of pastas, Italian-style pizzas. After all, this is where pizza comes from, is Italy. Also, a Florentine steak. You've got to try this steak. And then they have a lot of fresh cut meats that you can try. A lot of olive oil goes on the bread with the garlic, all that stuff. You know what to expect when you're coming here for the Florence food, but you got to do it. And then there's some of the best prosciutto you've ever eaten anywhere in the world right here. Next up, we're headed to Tuscany, and this is where you're going to find the Italian wine country, the world famous Tuscany right here. If you like going out to the vineyards and tasting wine, then you're going to definitely want to come out here. It's only about an hour or two away from Florence city center. And Tuscany is really famous for its landscapes, beautiful sunsets over the rolling green hills, the history, the artistic legacy. As I mentioned previously, when you're here, you've got to do wine tasting, maybe even bringing back a couple bottles from Italian wine country, whether you get them here in Florence or you get them in Tuscany. Either way, wine tasting is a part of the culture. Having a glass of wine at dinner is very common. Red wine or white wine. Now we have the Leaning Tower of Pisa. This one's about a 2.5 hour train ride outside of Florence. You can do it in a day trip, visit Pisa. I would probably leave early in the morning and then come back in the late afternoon. If you can get the high-speed train to Pisa, it's going to be a lot faster journey. Now let's talk about riding the train to Rome. This is something you can do very easily in a day because they have high-speed trains here. It is 162 miles, but the ride itself only takes an hour and a half and costs around 23 euros unless you decide to upgrade to business class, which may be worth it for some of you. But if you wanted to stay 1 or 2 nights in Rome, that would totally make sense so you don't feel rushed. We did make a full Rome things to do travel guide. I will put a link to that in the comments below as well as in the description. So if you plan to go to Rome, definitely watch that video. Also, sharing this video and that one with your friends and family that you plan to go with. And what you're looking at here is actually business class seating. That ticket is about twice the price of regular economy. So you're looking at around 55, 60 euros depending on the time of year and availability. It does book out fast. It is worth noting that you can also go up to Milan on a high-speed train quite efficiently from Florence as well, depending on which direction you want to go. Next up, let's talk about shopping. Speaking of Milan, Milan has a lot of great shopping, but here in Florence or even Rome, whether you do the shopping here or there, it doesn't matter. This is a look at my custom fitted leather jacket that I got here in Florence. Picking up that Italian leather, getting some paintings, getting a handbag for your wife, your girlfriend, your mom, always a good idea. And I got this here at Giorgio in Firenze at the leather factory. What do you guys think? Tell me what you think in the comments about this leather jacket, if you would get one, or if you thought this was a good purchase on my behalf. It cost around 200 euro. You'll be able to find plenty of these kind of leather shops selling jackets and other products right there in the central area. Speaking of central area, you'll also see street art. Now, you can tip these people who are creating these masterpieces on the ground with chalk. Really amazing to check that out, and it's all across the city in the central area. You'll also see other types of street performers mixed in here. That's what really brings the culture and the vibes to life here in Florence. Some people would tell you, watch out for scammers, because mixed in with all the artists. Speaking of art, you have the Golden Turtle here. People like to come here and check it out and take pictures, of course, as you would imagine. Also, they have the Medici Museum. We already spoke about the Medici family previously, but the Medicis were the ones who really ushered in the modern world of finance. Before you had the New World financial system, it was the Medici family. And on that note, I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please consider watching some more of our other videos. I will put a link to Rome, as well as another things to know about visiting Italy video. See you on the next one.